Hello, welcome to our podcast, How to Stay Married So Far. Welcome on iTunes or on YouTube, wherever you are.
I think it's episode like 67 or something.
Is
ridiculous.
it?
We've done so many topics, yeah.
Bloody hell, we've spent 67 half hours, 33 hours.
Something like that. Maybe
what's
it's not
half of
60.
67? Doubles. Anyway.
How to stay mathematical so far.
Talking in detail about
shit.
difficult
Which seems to have
things.
resonated with so many of you. So if you like our podcast, please give us as many stars as you feel you can. Please leave little comments, because then we Insta-story them on our Instagram account. Please, if you fancy seeing us in full lurid colour, watch us on YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube, maybe you want to listen to some of this when you're on the tube. So, yeah, how to stay married so far. It's never easy getting to sitting in front of these cameras on podcast day. I'm beginning to dread these days, behind the scenes, because Nadia goes a bit weird. And what happened today was she went a bit weird. And she went a bit weird in the way that she used to go really weird when you were really in the fog of war, which is the menopause.
Yeah, we thought it'd be a good one to talk about.
Because we haven't done it. We couldn't believe we hadn't done it.
We had an whole argument about it, didn't we? And then we went, I'm sure we've spoken about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we've brought it up in other subjects.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be really good, because I'm hugely proud of Loose Women as being the first programme to talk about the menopause. For literally 4 years, it was banned. And now everyone's talking about the menopause.
Why is that? Can I just ask why?
Well, oh my God. That's a whole story, isn't it? Because women are seen at that point as...
That's that dog being let
It's
in, by the way.
unsavoury, I think there's so many reasons why menopause isn't. I think because men are in charge and men don't want to hear about menopause.
No, but I'll tell you why I'm surprised it's not talked about. Because society, patriarchal society, for many, many years now, has had a vested interest in finding countless reasons to dismiss female issues or emotions. You know, the classic, characterised as hysterical, it's her time of the month, this is why they behave oddly, it's hormonal, no. There's never a justification to what women are feeling generally, societally, is there? There's always an excuse or a reason or a cause or an area. And I'd have thought that the menopause would have entered sort of public debate and discussion in the terms of women are uncontrollable and mad and it's all a bloody nightmare. But no one talks about it. I mean, I've never heard a man talk about it. I mean, I suppose I've never known men who've gone through it with their wives.
To be honest, I think a lot of times, because it is not spoken about in the way that, say, premenstrual tension and other hormonal things are, I think a lot of times people don't realise that what's happening in their marriage is the menopause.
Right.
And they'll attribute it to all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
And
what was the first signs that we had that you were going through the menopause? What's it called? It's called perimenopausal. I thought perimenopausal was a form of peri-peri chicken. I thought it was like I thought it was like spicy menopausal.
it's our 16-year-old daughter just walking
She's
past.
just decided it's probably apt that she walks out.
Well, the
Why is
thing
it
is,
called peri?
I pride myself in being, up on female things. That's my thing.
Yeah, I mean, you used to have a moon cup, for example.
I'm a woman's woman. I had a moon cup. The blood of the period is the blood of life.
I once pulled it out and said, "What's this?" Oh. What? No, out of your bag.
Oh, right. I was going to say.
Sorry. Out of her bag.
So awful.
Out of her bag. Out of your bag.
So,
So you like to think you're across all this stuff because you're a bit of a hippie chick, aren't you? You're in touch with your hormones, you're in touch with the lunar movements and all that sort of stuff.
But I just didn't know anything about the menopause. I'd never heard anyone speak about it. I'd heard about the change and all of that, but the change said in a negative way, and we'll get to that, because I think that because this does have a happy ending. That's what I would say. If you're really struggling, a happy ending. If you're really struggling with your menopause, stay till the end of this podcast, because there is a happy ending to it, and I'll talk about why I have reclaimed the whole thing of the change as not a negative thing but a positive thing. To answer your question about why I think men don't want to hear it, but I think partly that's because I mean, in the old days, you would die around the time of your menopause, wouldn't you? 40, late 30s, you'd had your children, you were finished with. What other use did you have?
Yes.
So...
But yeah, no, absolutely. And
I wonder if in some sort of primal way that's still, I don't know. I think that everybody needs to think about it more, because I think women are
living longer,
and they're often women that are, women are in a position then. I mean, really, they're a consumer's dream. Postmenopausal woman.
Why?
Well, you've got more money than a premenstrual woman, haven't you? Hopefully.
Have you?
You want to buy more things?
But here's the thing. I suppose
rubbish.
The thing about the menopause, was the menopause for you as a woman, getting closer to the menopausal moment, was it always something that happened to someone else?
I just never thought about it.
You never thought about it?
I just literally didn't think about it.
You didn't think about your last period? You didn't think about, oh my God, I'm getting to the end of things?
I just didn't. I thought, oh, at some point my periods will stop and that'll be my menopause and that's it. God, how how ignorant, naive, stupid that was. So, first of all, what happened with me was the first symptom, but I had no idea it was anything to do with the menopause, was that I started to feel very, very dark. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I would feel petrified, I felt empty, I felt pointless.
God, I've been feeling that ever since I was 16.
Yeah, and there was a dark cloud, honestly, that came over me. The next symptom, and I don't know what the time scale was on this, was my periods became erratic, and then they became horrendous, where I just could hardly go out. I was bleeding so much all the time, and it would stop and then it would start and it would just be gushing. And I know people that have had to sit in the bath.
Really?
Yeah, go to sleep in the bath because the bleeding
hell.
is so horrendous. With that then came the real tiredness and the irritability and utter exhaustion, rather like when you're first pregnant. The reason I'm telling you all these symptoms is because they're very frightening when they come. The other thing is terrible memory lapse. So for the first, really at the beginning of my menopause, I thought I was having early onset dementia, and I know that a lot of women talk about this. Also, you have to be very careful because apparently a lot of women, some people that may have early onset dementia are now putting it down to the menopause. So it's just best to see a doctor.
Right.
I started to get a bit of the sweats thing, but I'll come to that because I'll come to treatment. But basically, those were all the symptoms, and they were all very frightening. I did think I was dying with the bleeding. I thought that I had either ovarian cancer or womb cancer, and all this stuff I was keeping to myself. So, it's just like literally, oh my God, the floor is coming out.
Well, you were keeping it to yourself.
Me.
You were keeping it to yourself, but you weren't keeping it to yourself because, of course, you can't keep all that to yourself and it not seep out.
No, I meant the fear of obviously later we spoke about the dementia and cancer. I wasn't telling you at the beginning.
No,
absolutely.
absolutely.
I kept that to myself for a long time.
I mean, I think I have to confess, I think I thought the menopause was something that would happen to other couples. I never even, again, I suppose because I don't think about our age difference, because we're so sort of essentially young at heart in our sort of outlook, we're very childish about so many things. I think a huge part of our relationship, I just never even courted the idea that the getting old thing, and I think it must take lots of couples by surprise that suddenly you're passing a milestone that is clearly earmarks the fact that you're getting into a latter stage of life in your relationship and all that kind of stuff. The more obvious things, I guess, and I don't know if this is the case with all men, and I presume it is, I don't talk to other men about it, I haven't spoken to other men about it, but was most of the behavioural tics that I was seeing or experiencing or sensing in you weren't entirely dissimilar to your time of the month, weren't entirely dissimilar to the sort of hormonal hell, for want of a better expression, that you'd go through, after having a baby and all that kind of stuff, So we'd been through, a lot of those moments. We'd been through miscarriages, so there'd been lots of hormonal highs and lows that your body had gone through, remarkably, your body. And so it felt like just another, if you were looking at like a stock market chart of the markets going up and down like that, this was just another sort of, another jagged blip up. But then what crept into it was, I think, a fundamental shift in sexual appetite, and then a fundamental shift in sudden and quite frightening eruptions of unexpected and seemingly irreversible
rage
about not, and it's not as simple as to say it's about the tiniest things, because it's like this, you know, the idea is that you go through menopause and then a woman finds all the things that she was normally going through suddenly intolerable. People who are going through the menopause and I guess relationships are also going through all the highs and lows of that relationship too. So there were still problems in our relationship. We were still encountering them. But when we hit road bumps or bumps in the road, oh my God, it was like no other time in our relationship. It was like where we would have survived or got through one sort of row. It felt like every single time we hit a bump in the road, this was the end of everything. And I remember feeling very frightened.
I just hated you.
No, I know.
I just it was almost like
I hated you.
This is what happens. The estrogen drops. This is a perfect way, in a way, to describe what happens. So in a really simplistic way. So the estrogen drops, which is the nurturing, caring sort of hormone. You're in a blind panic about your life and about your imminent death. And to give this as an example, so before menopause, somebody would go, oh, I really want a sandwich, right?
I was going to say something else.
And you would jump up and you go, oh, let me make a sandwich, because you'd want to. I'd want to make this sandwich. And then post-menopause, it's like, make your own bloody sandwich.
Right.
And that was very confusing to me. It was like, it's almost like there's the mothering side of me, just that has always been there naturally, just when I felt like I didn't have the capacity to look after myself. So looking after anybody else, and it wasn't their fault because nothing had changed for them, but I just didn't want to do the stuff I'd done before because I just couldn't. I mean, functioning on a daily basis was hard enough. And so I just got very enraged. When I say I hate you, I didn't mean that I hate you all the time. I had times where I really hated you, where I just thought, I can't do me and you. I can't look after myself and look after you. I just can't, emotionally. I just can't do it. And we've spoken a lot in these podcasts about me being a rescuer and all of that. And I am a rescuer, and you know, it is a problem that I have. I rescue because I'm trying to distract from my own stuff. That's what a rescuer is. A rescuer is somebody that's avoiding their own shit by looking after somebody else. And so that was really hard, that I couldn't do that anymore. And so, but nobody knew I'd changed. So they were wanting the same, but I just couldn't do it. So it was just like, I just wanted. It was almost like I just needed to go away to another island. Apparently, men now really fear the menopause because so many women just want the end of the relationship. Menopause comes and they just can't cope with the relationship.
Well, I mean, my jokey phrase for it is always men on pause, because you are put on pause in the bedroom, you are put on pause emotionally, you are put on pause in all the regards. And I don't mean that in a really sort of disparaging way. I mean, it you know, for other men or for women watching this who have partners and who they love and they're concerned about, and perhaps they're going to go through it or are going through the menopause, you know, I think men have to really gird their loins, quite literally, and recognise that you are going to enter, for want of a better expression, turbulence, and it is an incredibly turbulent time. I mean, I suppose, you know, the open end, there was never a point where it felt like, we are in a menopausal relationship. And I think the thing that I found really difficult to deal with was there'd be moments, eruptions of insanity, and then it would be the calm of the ocean afterwards for seemingly weeks, and things would be back to normal and things would be fine. And then there would be the eruption of sheer insanity, or the slightest thing would send you into an absolute tailspin of not just fury, but I mean, God almighty, you've never seen anything like it. I mean, and we've talked before on podcasts where, you know, I did think this is not going to happen. And I remember I remember standing in one hot doorway at one point when a row was happening, and you were using a logic in the row that was so illogical. And I thought, there's no way we can pull her back from this. She's steadfastly taking this ship over the waterfall, and nothing I say, because it's me saying it, is going to prevent this. I am the enemy. I am the problem, to quote Breaking Bad. I am the man who knocks at the door.
Well, at one point in my life with this, I was blowing up like that at all kinds of people. It wasn't just you. Just all tolerance had gone out of the window.
Utterly.
It's like premenstrual tension, but a million times worse. But it is worse because you've also got this real fear, this darkness that just comes in, and if feel a bit panicked, and you feel very panicked. I think I had a few like mini panic attacks, which just so wasn't like, it's just like you've been invaded by an alien. That's what it's like.
But the weird thing was that it did feel a little bit like that today, and it's funny. There'll be moments where I can reach back to how it felt in that period, where there's a certain sort of irrationality around the edges of what's going on. Everyone believes they're right and around. Everyone believes, and everyone makes mistakes and around and all that. But there can come a point where a certain logic, not autistic logic, not male logic, not just emotional logic, goodbye, mate, you're out the window. And at those points, I genuinely feel absolute fear in the face of femininity. Because I think, oh my Christ, because, if I think back to my childhood, and we've talked in another podcast about my nan's aggression and what have you, clearly she was in the menopause when I was a toddler. My mum has been on HRT most of her life, but she was, there were periods in her life where she was deeply irrational and violent and aggressive and all these kinds of things. And, I think it's very hard. That's our daughter singing in the background, by the way. I think it's a very troubling time for a bloke, especially if you're a bloke who wants, you consider yourself feminist, and you're not sort of like one of those guys going, oh, well, it's all women and they're bloody. I mean, I'd imagine, is the menopause the reason so many relationships do hit the skids at that point in people's lives?
I think so. I think you get really tired, you get weary. I just had such weariness. It was just like, oh God, I don't like myself. I feel horrible. I feel really unattractive. I'm fatter than I was. My hair's whiter than it was. My collagen is just disappearing. Like, you just feel really, really unattractive. And that's quite quick. And so that really does affect, my joie de vie, just sort of, I've always been a joie de vie person, and it just was diminishing. And you think, God, you know what, maybe it would just be easier for me to just be on my own and not having to think about how horrible I am, or how dark I am, or what's the point of me, what's the point of me, what's the point of me, that's what it felt like.
And so if you're feeling that, and then I'm feeling, I wish this woman would just fucking run for the hills, because it's intolerable what's going on
It's
here.
when you get close to divorce, that's why so many people, I think, at our stage in a marriage get divorced, and people look at them and think, well, why did they get divorced then? They've been together all that time. But I think you just get to the point where you think, I can't argue, I can't justify, it's a very weird But
I remember you saying at one point, yes, you are a rescuer and all of that, but I do think there is a contingent part of being any wife / mother within a family, is that you are, whether it's biologically determined or whatever, I don't want to get into that sort of can of worms, but there is the carer in the mother, and there's the sort of, there's the carer, I'm a caring dad, but, we by and large, societally kind of split men and women into those camps. And I remember you talking a lot about the fact that you just had the capacity to care in that maternal sort of way that you care for everyone. You just had enough. I mean, that was the thing you were feeling a lack of. You just couldn't be asked.
No.
Well, and that's the shock. And I think that's the thing that's important for other people to hear, for blokes to hear, is that it's not that necessarily comes back fully in the same way. It just shifts, and it is a period of time that will change. Would you say you've got back to that, or do you think when you've gone through the menopause you've irreversibly shifted and changed?
But it's like I remember saying to our friend Rachel, my homeopath. So, but what I don't understand is now I'm postmenopausal. She said, yeah, but you've gone through the door and the door is closed.
What does that mean?
The next part.
What's the next part?
It's not like, you go through your menopause and then you're back to yourself. This is the next stage.
What is the next stage?
Well, towards death. No, I'm joking. No, but it's in the next. Well, okay. Well, let's talk more about the positive thing now, because side of this. How I changed things, how things got better, was I started to embrace it rather than try and push it away. The fact, some of the books that I read and some of the articles that I read were really important to me, because they talk about, say for instance when your memory is getting worse and worse, they say, maybe you just need to be trying to remember less things, you know, do less things. Oh, I feel really menopausal as I'm talking about this. I don't feel like I'm making any sense at all.
No, you are. Totally.
I'm not being very articulate. It's really annoying.
You are.
But anyway, so I decided to take a multi-pronged attack, which was to look at how I eat more menopausal friendly foods. Go to my homeopath regularly every month. So I would book it 1 month and then go, that would be like if you're getting HRT, because I didn't want to take HRT as I think HRT is fine, but for me, I just didn't want to get into that thing. I was nervous of it. It sounds really wanky, but I did get into meditation, and that stopped me from going mad, because it does make you just slow down a bit. And my whole life I'd wanted to meditate, and I always said, well, I can't stop my mind thinking, I can't empty my mind. But that's where we're so wrong. That isn't what you have to do with meditation. So I really advise people. I started with a timer, something called the Insight Timer. It's free on, it's just an app, and I just did that every day. I used homeopathy regularly every month. And I also just accepted that I was changing, and that's okay, and you don't have to be a lush, fertile, gorgeous, nubile thing the whole time. You have to acceptance.
And acceptance, I think, is something that I will be honest here. I mean, I think even as a incredibly liberal-minded, well-meaning man, I struggled in the intimacy area with the change in libido and the change in appetite, and I know that created real problems for us, because there was not conflict, but I clearly wanted something that you didn't want, and I had to shift essentially my I hate to use the word urges, it makes you sound animal, but my desires or my passion and all that kind of stuff. I really felt I had to. It's the most major part of my life was during you going through the menopause, where I had to clip my natural tendencies or try and control them and hem them. I failed miserably many times, and I know that we'd have rows where you'd think I was in a mood because we weren't having sex and and those things did creep in. So But I think it's important that people hear that, because that is a major contingent of relationships. That's a major contingent of what the problem becomes in those relationships.
And obviously I'm very wary about talking about this.
Yeah, no, I don't want to talk in great detail about it.
So I won't go into any more detail than you have. But yes, it is a massive thing. And I think, if you're a man listening to this, I would say it is difficult for you. It is really difficult for you. But you cannot imagine how ghastly we feel, how lost we feel, how you don't have anything as men that shows you so clearly that you're coming to the end of something. And it's the weirdest thing, we've got 2 children and you've got 4, and we're very, very blessed. But there is something about when that stops and there is no more. I said the other day, and everyone laughed, I said, I get jealous now when I hear people talking about their periods. There's something, you get to the end of something, a door closes, and men just don't ever have anything like that, where the door just closes and you are just clearly moving towards the end of something, and it's very, very difficult. We'd be walking along and there'd be a pregnant woman, and I would find this, and this is crazy because I've got children, but I would just find this irrational jealousy would come through me. Not now, I'm through that. And then we all might be walking along chatting away, and nobody in our group, nobody in the family knows that I'm going through this whole horrendous thing in my head. That's an end, I'm dried up, I'm this, all these awful things come to you, and that I'm moving towards the end of my life. I've gone through one whole thing. So it is awful for men, but I think the only way through it as a couple is, and this is going to sound difficult, but this is proper advice, is you have to be more selfless, men. You have to be kinder, because to be angrier, to not listen, to not want to know, will only make it worse. It will only make everything worse.
No, absolutely.
So it's like everything else in a marriage, the only thing is communication. Now I get that's really easy to say, and for you, you know I was a fucking nightmare, but I remember once screaming at you and you went, oh, I don't know what the menopause is. I remember saying to you, why don't you Google it? Because you hadn't Googled it. You hadn't done the simple thing of saying, and we're through all this now, but I'm saying this as advice to other men, Google it. Have a look round, read some other stories of what this means, and you will know some of what your wife or your partner is going through. And it's fucking horrible. It's really, really. So then when you understand that actually she's very frightened, she's feeling very alone, she feels this terrible end of something, you will feel empathy and you will want to do everything to make that better. And whatever that needs, if you love her, that's what you will do.
And well, and I agree. And I mean, I think we found out the bumpy way, and we found out the difficult way, as anyone can, and that's the purpose, I guess, of these podcasts, isn't it? To share our own experiences, and then perhaps for other people to learn from them. I mean, yeah, you know, we went through all that stuff of you resenting me, and you resenting me wanting whatever I wanted, and you know, and me feeling like you would have preferred me to go off with someone else just to get me out the way, and all that kind of stuff. And that I remember feeling so grief-stricken at that period that something was going, and I'm forget the sex element of it. I'm talking about the, you know, I just felt grief-stricken, truly grief-stricken. But you're right, it's all about acceptance. Fundamentally, it's all about acceptance. See you, darling. My dad dogs are going.
Have fun. Through with the shoes. Bye, darling. Love you. Sorry if you're listening on iTunes for the first time. We don't. Oh, that's her going. We don't do this in a studio, so we do have all real
it's
life sounds.
It's in a real family house.
Because we don't edit it.
So now Maddie's gone, I can really say what I mean. No, I'm joking. But I do remember feeling really heartbroken, and I do think that what I'd like to sort of say here just a little bit is that the sex thing isn't always...
People can spell that, including our children.
No, but it's not...
And including any blooming newspapers.
But it's also not always about just that. It's not about it. It's about... obviously for everyone, it's an emotional thing. Well, it's an emotionally complicated thing.
And so see sex as love. If a man isn't...
Not entirely.
Well, no, but a man can't feel loved without sex, whereas a woman can.
Well, yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, when there's that feeling that actually one has to step outside of the relationship in that, and it seems to have been sort of ring-fenced by the woman going through what she's going through, there's a feeling that, like, okay, ballast in the relationship's having to be cut dry and let loose and thrown away. I get that. And when that ballast goes, it's one symptom of affection and love and passion between each other, but it's quite a major one. For me, I always say it's the distinction between being a friend and being a partner.
What I would say is the way to go, rather like when somebody's just had a baby and they're totally exhausted and they've got a baby sucking on their nipple all day, and then they've got a toddler that you're giving out love, wiping asses, cleaning houses, making the dinner, and then your husband, you know, quite rightly feels excluded from that. And you know, and shouldn't feel bad about that. You know, and shouldn't feel bad about that. But the fact still remains you're in two different places emotionally. And I liken the menopause a bit to that. Is that you're so at sea. It's like the rug's been taken from under your feet. You feel the ugliest you've ever felt. You feel so exhausted, just like you do when you've had a baby. Yeah. Your body doesn't feel like your body. It feels like you've just. It's just so different. Your body just feels so different, and it's very similar to that. And rather like when a woman has their baby or have their children, it's a similar another phase. It doesn't mean that it's any easier for the partner, but that is the reason. But men, I think, too often want to say, "Oh, but you don't love me anymore, and you don't like me." And we're not necessarily talking about you. This is talking about to friends of mine as well. And actually, what they need to do is look and say, you. The woman is actually having a lot of problem loving themselves. And that's often where the disconnect is. It's like, you don't love me. No, I don't love myself. I don't even like myself. I'm feeling fucking horrible. I'm raging around like a maniac. I feel disgusting. I'm losing my hair. My face is dropping by the minute. I don't feel particularly gorgeous. And my womb is drying up.
Yeah.
You know, so all those things have a big effect.
You know what? I wish I'd watched this when we were going through it, This would have been really useful
yeah,
because
we
hearing
didn't have anything.
well, no, but hearing everything you're saying and paralleling it alongside the experience of having a baby, it's like, well, hang on a minute. We all accept having a baby as part of lives, kind of, the rituals of life. We all make acceptances for it. We all cater for it. We all make exceptions, and so why not the same thing? Why not the same thing?
I think
You're
the
right.
other way to think about
Why don't we
is,
celebrate it as a birth, a rebirth? I mean, it is a rebirth.
Well,
isn't
that is the positive thing about menopause, and that's how you have to approach. It's like your blood suddenly goes. Every month you see your blood, and that reminds you that you are a woman. It's an incredibly powerful body that can do this thing, and then suddenly it goes bam. After lots of very heavy bleeding, so you're exhausted, you're drained, all that sort of stuff. But the way to think about it is to say, this is our time. This is a different time. You've had your children or whatever. And now this is about you just thinking more. You have to look after your body better after menopause. And that's, if you can see it as a nurturing time of yourself. And then when you start to do that, then you can start loving the others in your life again the way that you did, but you do have to find a way back to yourself, and that's why a lot of people will go quite hippie, go on retreats and do a bit of yoga and all that stuff. It's because they're actually trying to find their way back to this new body, this new self that they don't know who it is. It's like a stranger, and you've got to get to know her again, and you've got to try and love her again, even though she's not very lovable.
So would you say holistically it's important to go through all the hell of everything that you're describing and you go through, whereas HRT is a way of streamlining it and kind of controlling it?
Well, I mean, I think HRT is everybody's choice, and I know people that have had an amazing time on HRT. But, knowing a couple of people at the moment that are now coming off it, I didn't realise that when you come off it, you go through the menopause.
That's ridiculous. Whatever
Like
age
the
you come off
sweats
it.
come back and
whenever
everything.
you come off it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know the truth of that. But
Right.
but I know two people that have recently come off HRT after years and years on it, and they're having full-on
Bloody
sweats
hell.
and everything.
Oh,
So
right.
I think if you are not suffering terribly, because lots of people do, then try and find a different way. But if you're really suffering, then why not go and see a doctor and see? Because I'm definitely not one of these people that says nobody should
Right.
take HRT. But I wanted to find a natural way if I could. And acceptance that, and gratitude, I'm lucky to have had children. When I think of women going through menopause that didn't have children as well, my God, when all those options are taken away, Jesus Christ. That's just,
You mean perhaps for women who wanted children, not women who've
couldn't have
decided not to? Yeah, quite.
I mean, I even know somebody that had never wanted children, never even for 1 minute. Then when she went through her menopause, she was just like, she had a few days, not long, but a few days of absolute blind panic.
Wow.
So can you imagine that if you never had children and
yeah.
it goes? Because I felt it so keenly, and I've had children.
God.
It's like, imagine if you suddenly just couldn't have any sperm. There's just no sperm.
God.
You just suddenly, right, from now on, you're in your menopause and you're never going to ejaculate again. Doesn't mean you're not going to have sex, but you're never going to see sperm again.
Jesus, there's the
Well, that's what happens with...
prospect of it, and what's happening now is quite frightening.
Sorry to say it.
I have to be able to ejaculate. I'm sorry.
Right, stop. You don't have to go too far. Stop.
I haven't gone
Don't
far
keep
enough.
saying the word.
I haven't gone far enough.
YouTube will take us off, apart from anything else.
Everything you're saying sounds wrong. Anyway, before YouTube tugs us off, let's finish.
But anyway, I think as a couple that have managed to scrape through the menopause, what advice?
Acceptance. But
Acceptance.
My advice
you're
would...
not going to be able to go back, girls. You're going through it, and you're going to come through the other side, and it's going to be a bit more about you than about everybody else, and maybe that's a good thing. And you've got to talk to each other and say how you're feeling.
And I think
Don't do it in the middle of an argument.
And I think for blokes, you have to know you're with someone. You need to be with someone because you love them, not because you just want to get what you want from a relationship. And I do think that, unfortunately, probably a lot of men do fall into that category. Not all the time, but at stages of their life. I think you've just given me a really useful grab if I watch this prior to you going through your menopause, which is one of, when this happens, it's akin to having a baby. It's a change. It's a life change. And if you treat it like that and think, well, we're not going to be here forever. How would I'd help out. When you were pregnant, I'm running around you all the time getting things for you.
But
so
it's harder for us because there's no joy of a baby.
No,
it's
absolutely.
just a monumental, a seismic shift in your physical and mental self all at the same time.
Absolutely. And just make
with
sure,
only bad news at the end of it.
just make sure you have got a very comfortable bed in the spare room or downstairs, because you will sleep on it. Unfortunately, you will sleep on it a lot. I mean, a lot.
Yes.
Men on pause.
Men on pause.